Scott McTominay was just another name on the Manchester United team sheet, squad filler, bench warmer. The guy who runs a lot, plays it simple, and if you're lucky, scores a goal when your striker forgets how to. But what have I told you that the same McTominay has just led Napoli to the brink of the Serie A title, is adored by a city that treats football like religion, and is now being called a £100 million midfielder. This isn't Football Manager, this is real, and it might just be one of the smartest transfers in modern football. Napoli is no stranger to football miracles. Decades ago, a 5'5" Argentine named Diego Maradona lifted the club from mid-table mediocrity to legendary status. So when they signed a 6'4" Scottish midfielder from Manchester United for £25 million, no one expected miracles. But then Scott McTominay began scoring important goals, clutch goals. He started dominating midfield battles, leading by example and showing a grit that Napoli fans instantly fell in love with. And yes, let's get one thing straight. We're not saying McTominay is better than Maradona, arguably the best footballer in history. But the impact he's had this season on the team and the fans is quite incredible. What began as a quiet transfer soon turned into one of the most talked about moves in European football. McTominay wasn't just another squad player, he became the heartbeat of a title-chasing Napoli side. So how did a bit-part player at United become the signing of the season in Italy? Let's rewind. Scott McTominay came through the Man United academy with all the tools you'd want, tall, strong and full of energy. He got his big chance under Jose Mourinho, who even gave him the Manager's Player of the Year award. But after that, things didn't really take off. He was always in the squad, but never one of the first names on the team sheet. Over the years, he played under 5 different managers: Mourinho, Solskjaer, Rangnick, Ten Hag and even Carrick, but he still couldn't lock down a proper role. Sometimes he was a defensive midfielder, other times a box-to-box player, and once in a while he'd be pushed up into attack. He did score some big goals here and there, but more often than not, he was the backup option, never the main man. United's midfield kept changing, with players like Fred, Casemiro and Eriksen coming in, and McTominay just sort of blended into the background. But when he played for Scotland, it was a completely different story. While McTominay struggled for consistent minutes at Old Trafford, he was quietly making a name for himself with Scotland. He became a goal-scoring machine during the Euro 2024 qualifying, netting 7 goals, more than most strikers. Whether it was headers, volleys or arriving late into the box, he showed the kind of finishing you typically expect from attacking midfielders like Frank Lampard, not from a player often seen as a defensive midfielder. His performances didn't go unnoticed, catching the eyes of scouts around Europe. However, it wasn't until Napoli came calling, quietly and cleverly, that his career took a significant turn. In the summer of 2024, Napoli found themselves facing a midfield dilemma. For years, their midfield had been anchored by Zielinski and Zambo Anguissa, but both were beginning to show signs of age and inconsistency. Napoli needed a new energy, someone who could dominate physically, cover large swathes of the pitch and contribute to their attacking play with crucial goals. They needed a player who could offer more than just the traditional defensive duties, someone who could push forward and make a difference in the final third. McTominay, with his height, strength and goal-scoring ability, ticked all the boxes. Meanwhile, Man United was undergoing a major overhaul with several players on the move. Napoli seized the opportunity and came in with a bid of €30 million, about £25 million, a move that went largely under the radar in the Premier League. No major English clubs jumped to the chance to sign him, and no pundits predicted McTominay would become a key player at the top level. But in Naples, the story was different. They saw McTominay not just as a solid option, but as the perfect addition to their midfield, one capable of helping them push for Serie A glory and making an impact on the European stage. Now, you can't talk about McTominay's transformation without bringing up Antonio Conte. The Italian manager, known for turning ordinary players into stars, had a knack for unblocking hidden potential. He once made Victor Moses a top-tier wing-back and turned Nicolo Barella into a Serie A sensation. When he arrived at Napoli, Conte saw something in McTominay that others didn't. He recognised that the Scottish midfielder could be more than just a defensive workhorse. The key: freedom. Conte gave McTominay the freedom to push forward, break through the defensive lines and unleash his attacking instincts. Instead of keeping him in the traditional number 6 role, where his main job was to break up play, Conte moved him into a more advanced number 8 position. There, McTominay could crash the box late, use his size and physicality to overpower smaller midfielders and score goals, something he'd already proven he could do for Scotland. The result, a McTominay who wasn't just playing in the midfield, he was dominating it, and it worked wonders. By January 2025, McTominay had already scored 9 goals in just 17 Serie A appearances. His goals came in all forms: headers from corners, one-touch finishes from cutbacks, and rocket volleys from the edge of the box. There wasn't a type of goal that he hadn't mastered, and more importantly, every single one of them was crucial. He wasn't just scoring when Napoli was cruising to a 4-0 win, he was scoring the goals that secured victories. Late winners against Roma, Juventus and Lazio proved McTominay wasn't just a presence in the box, he was a game changer. Serie A defenders, once confident in handling him, suddenly found themselves unable to cope with his strength, intelligence and knack for arriving at the right moment. As the goals piled up, the football world began to take notice. Pundits, once sceptical about his £25 million price tag, started asking, was McTominay actually a bargain? By March, the whispers turned into loud declarations. Scott McTominay was now considered one of the most complete midfielders in Italy. By April 2025, Scott McTominay had gone from a bench player at Man United to one of the most sought-after midfielders in Europe. The transfer market's valuation might not always tell the full story, but performances on the pitch certainly do. With his stellar play in Serie A, top clubs were reportedly ready to pay £80 million or more for him. Real Madrid, Bayern Munich and Manchester City showed interest, but Napoli had no intention of selling. They had their star and they were holding on to him. In a world where £100 million midfielders like Enzo Fernandez, Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice have become the norm, McTominay fits right in. Antonio Conte even joked if he had an Italian passport, he'd be the most expensive midfielder in Europe. The real magic though came in the form of a nostalgic twist. Diego Maradona, Napoli's legendary icon, led the club to 2 Serie A titles, leaving an unmatched legacy. For decades, no one came close to replicating that success. Now they're closing in on a second title in 3 years. With McTominay bossing the midfield, Napoli found themselves dreaming once again. A Neapolitan revolution is in full swing, and not even the writers of Ted Lasso could have imagined a story quite like this one. If Napoli can win Serie A, then McTominay will forever be a legend in Naples. Perhaps he can help attract other players to the team next season to battle with familiar rivals in Inter, Juventus and AC Milan. Can they even go on to mount a Champions League challenge next season? Time will tell, but one thing is certain, McTominay will be a part of the journey. So where do we place McTominay now? From being a utility man at United to becoming a goal-scoring machine under Conte. From an underappreciated squad player to the hero of Naples. A £25 million man who turned into a superstar, worth 4 times as much, and more importantly, beloved by fans. Football is full of surprises, but sometimes it just takes the right coach, the right system, and the right city to transform a good player into a great one. Scott McTominay didn't just revive his career, he might have just become a legend. And to think, United let him go for £25 million. If you enjoyed this story of McTominay's rise, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell for more amazing football stories.